Allison stared in disbelief at the tightly boarded up gate in her backyard. Confusion washed over her as she tried to make sense of the bizarre act. Who could have done something so absurd? Allison's curiosity soon outweighed her frustration, and she started looking into the strange event. The boards on her gate were nailed in a sloppy way, not something a professional would do. Who would do this to her property? As word spread about what happened, the neighbors grew angry. People whispered and gossiped, wondering who had the nerve to block her gate. Determined to solve the mystery, Allison decided to take matters into her own hands. She wanted to know what had driven someone to do this. But when she confronted the person she suspected, their explanation was nothing like she expected. Whoever did this couldn't keep her fenced in. After all, her backyard gate led directly to the beach, and she loved using it. Who would dare enter her property without her permission? Since moving from Chicago to Florida, Allison's life had brightened in every way. It was the best decision she had ever made. Her life in Chicago had been dull, but once she moved, she never looked back. The moment she saw the house ad, she knew she had to have it. The location was perfect, and being able to walk to the beach was a dream come true. No matter what, she was determined to live in her dream home. To move down to Florida, she packed up everything she owned. The backyard gate connected her to the beach every day, and her house was perfect. When she opened her gate and stepped outside, she would greet her neighbors. There were so many friendly people here. However, it wasn't long before things started to change. Single woman Allison Perkins, 36 years old and a Chicago native, knew she would end up in another state since she had always wanted to explore her country. Although she loved Chicago and all it had to offer, she was looking for adventure and the sun. Above all, things were falling into place. Allison was overjoyed when she moved into her new house a few months ago. She had expected everything and more from this experience. Her backyard gate gave her access to the beach, and she could see the ocean every day of her life. It was like a dream come true. There was no way she could believe her good fortune. Things became difficult for her when a new housing development began taking shape right behind her house. The disturbance was a daily occurrence for Allison. She worked from home, and every day, contractors talked loudly and hammers kept banging. Although she tried to ignore the racket, it only got worse as time went on. In the end, Allison lost her cool when they started using drills and angle grinders. Having endured enough of this noise, she was ready to give up. As she approached the contractor, she walked through the convenient backyard gate. "Excuse me, sir, do you mind keeping the noise level to a minimum? I have lots of work to do." Allison was regarded as if she came from another planet by the contractor. "Lady, I can't just stop working. We have a deadline to get these apartments up, and I can't tell my men to keep the noise level to a minimum because of one person. We're working as well, so please, if you don't mind, I've got to get back to it." Allison was left perplexed. She was surprised to see the men instantly go back to drilling and hammering. She turned on her heels and went back to her house. Was this the way things were going to be for her? This was not how she had pictured living in her dream house. She wanted peace and tranquility, and now she got just the opposite. Each day, Allison had to put up with the noise, and every time she went through her little gate to confront them, she was swiftly dismissed. The men even laughed at her. They thought she was being overly dramatic about the whole situation. As soon as they saw her coming through the gate, they knew they were going to get another talking to. However, things were about to take a serious turn when Allison decided to go away for the weekend. She traveled back to Chicago to visit her family and friends, and when she returned, things were just not the same. There was now a huge crane behind her house hoisting lumber up and down. The construction was now in full force. But that was not the only thing she noticed. She had the day off and decided to spend the day lounging on the beach instead of listening to the noise of the construction. She packed her beach bag and headed out. However, when she got to her backyard gate, something wasn't right. She tried to open it, but it just wouldn't budge. It seemed like her gate was stuck. She pulled and pulled, but it was no use. Loaf, she scratched her head in confusion. "What's going on with this gate?" she mumbled to herself. She left it and decided to take the longer route to get to the beach. But when she returned to her gate, she could see what the problem was. It looked like someone had boarded up her gate from the outside. That was why she couldn't get out from her side of the gate. Who could have done such a thing? Allison was dumbfounded. But then she remembered something. The gate had been boarded up with wooden planks and nails. The only person she could think to do this to her was the contractor. She marched up to him. She was going to give him a piece of her mind. "Who do you think you are? How dare you step foot on my property? Do you know that I can have you arrested for trespassing?" The man was taken aback by Allison's yelling. Whoa, old lady. Please, what are you on about? I have no idea what you are hollering about." Allison stood her ground. She wasn't going to let them get away with this. "I'm talking about my gate. You had one of your guys boarded up. You didn't like it when I kept coming over to complain, did you? Remove these boards right now, or I'm calling the police." The man saw that Allison was going to be a thorn in his side. Allison wasn't about to be bullied by the likes of these construction workers. They had deliberately come onto her property, and now they had to face the consequences. "Look, lady, "I don't know what you're talking about. This was not us. But I did see someone busy with the gate on Saturday morning. I don't know who it was, but it was some woman wearing a fancy suit." Allison's eyes widened in shock and fury. A woman in a fancy suit? That description didn't match anyone from her neighborhood. As the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, Allison's anger intensified. It could only mean one thing: the involvement of the HOA board. She marched back to her gate and examined the crew's boarding job. The shoddy workmanship and the deliberate attempt to confine her felt like a violation of her freedom. She could not fathom how the HOA board, an entity that had no jurisdiction over her non-HOA neighborhood, could stoop so low. Determined to seek justice, Allison gathered her evidence and stormed into the next HOA board meeting. Faces turned towards her as she entered the offices, a mix of curiosity and apprehension evident among the board members. "I demand an explanation." Allison's voice echoed in the room. "Who gave you the right to board up my gate? This is outrageous, and I won't stand for it." The HOA president, a stern-faced woman, tried to maintain her composure. "Miss Perkins, this is highly irregular. Our jurisdiction doesn't extend to your neighborhood. Are you sure it was us?" Allison presented the evidence, including witness statements and the description of the mysterious woman in the fancy suit. The room fell silent as the realization dawned on the HOA board members. After a tense moment, the HOA president sighed and admitted, "It appears there might have been a misunderstanding. We did discuss the new development behind your house and the noise complaints, but we never authorized such actions. If someone from our board did this, it was without our knowledge." Allison was seething with anger, but also felt a twinge of satisfaction at the admission. The board members exchanged uneasy glances, realizing the gravity of their mistake. The news of the HOA's misguided intervention spread like wildfire through the neighborhood. A wave of public outcry surged, and residents began questioning the authority and ethics of the HOA board. It became a scandal that drew attention from local media. Allison, initially a victim, became a symbol of resistance against unjust authority. Her fight for the freedom to access her own property struck a chord with many, even those outside her neighborhood. As the scandal escalated, Allison decided to take legal action against the HOA board for their trespassing in violation of her property rights. The courtroom became the stage for a dramatic showdown, with lawyers arguing over jurisdiction, boundaries, and the limits of authority. The trial became a spectacle, drawing media attention far beyond the neighborhood. The HOA board faced mounting pressure to rectify their actions and compensate Allison for the emotional distress caused by their thoughtless decision. The legal battle transformed into a rallying point for the community, with neighbors joining forces to support Allison. Protests outside the HOA offices became a common sight, demanding accountability and transparency. Amidst the chaos, the HOA president resigned, and the board publicly apologized to Allison and the entire neighborhood. The incident prompted a reevaluation of the HOA's policies and procedures to prevent such overreach in the future. In the end, Allison emerged victorious. The court ruled in her favor, condemning the HOA's actions as a blatant violation of property rights. As part of the settlement, the HOA agreed to cover the legal fees and compensate Allison for the emotional distress she endured. The victory wasn't just a personal triumph for Allison, it was a triumph for the entire community. The incident sparked a renewed sense of community unity, prompting residents to actively participate in HOA meetings and voice their concerns. The once divisive HOA became more open and responsive, and with the legal battle behind her, Allison finally found the peace she sought in her dream home. The construction behind her property ended, and the community grew stronger, united by the experience. Allison, now respected in the neighborhood, helped bridge the gap between residents and the HOA. The incident, though tough, turned her into a positive force for change. In time, she forgave the HOA as they learned from their mistakes, fostering understanding and cooperation. The once boarded-up gate became a symbol of resilience, showing how one person could ignite change and unite a community. Looking back, Allison was grateful for the journey that reshaped her life and the neighborhood.